Hey friends, welcome to Your Story Matters podcast. My name is Michaela, and I am so happy you're here. My hope for this show is that we experience the power of storytelling and understand that we are the main characters in our story so that we can live as our truly authentic selves. You're in the right place to hear real stories that will challenge, inspire, and encourage you on your personal growth journey. I hope you enjoy. Today on the show is Denise Porter. She is a clinical hypnotherapist, certified RTT practitioner, and transformational healing facilitator who helps women feel seen, heard, and deeply connected to their truth, their bodies, and their power. Through a blend of rapid transformational therapy, clinical hypnosis, energy work, and somatic practices, Denise guides women out of the patterns that keep them quiet, small, or stuck, and into a reality where their voice leads, their worth is embodied, and their presence takes up space. Her three-pillar approach helps clients feel seen in the fullness of who they are, heard in their own voice and truth, and connected to their intuition, body, and sense of inner safety. Denise draws on over 2 decades of experience as an educator, blending science and soul to hold a grounded, sacred space for transformation. Her work is deeply intuitive, trauma-informed, and rooted in the belief that women don't need fixing, they need remembering. When she's not guiding clients through life-changing breakthroughs, you'll find her reading, teaching, chasing ocean light, or lovingly managing the chaos of 3 cats, 2 teenage daughters, and 1 very patient husband. She believes words are spells, the body is a compass, and your voice is the most powerful tool you have for shaping your reality. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Denise. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am so happy that you are here, and I am happy that I am here today with none other than Denise Porter. Welcome to Your Story Matters.
Thank you so much, Michaela. I'm happy to be here.
We're just going to jump right into it today because we already talked about our hair before we hit record. So now that that's out of the way, which was probably the most important thing, we can dive into the good stuff. So we always start with the big overarching question here, and that is, what is your story?
Okay, well, I'll tell you a little bit about me. My name is Denise Porter, and I'm actually an elementary teacher. Have been for past 20 plus years. And that was how I identified. Elementary school teacher. Worked with children who are neurodivergent, did a lot of the things. But what happened was I had always experienced anxiety growing up. It was something I was used to. I had tools. But it wasn't until my daughter started to really exhibit severe anxiety that I started to look for other things. As a teacher, I had options. I knew the medical system. I knew the education system. I knew where to get resources. But I wasn't finding the resources that I needed to help her. So I started going into the energy world. And in fact, the one day I was with a friend and we took the yellow pages. And for those of you younger viewers that don't know what that is, it's like taking a giant phone made of paper with all of the numbers that you need. And we just opened it and we were looking for energy healers. And we happened to find one who was about Huna. And Huna is sort of a shamanic training and it's based in ancient Hawaiian culture. And I started to learn about energy. And I started to realize, wow, I can focus my thoughts, I can focus my intentions, and I can make things happen. And I became really interested and I started learning more and more. And as I learned different tools and I started adding different modalities. And I started kind of practicing on the people around me because, who better to practice on than all these guinea pigs that you have access to, right? And I noticed my daughter started to make changes. And she was able to start to come out into the world. I mean, there was still anxiety. It was still something that was there. But slowly but surely, kind of like a flower opening up, I was starting to see changes. And that really excited me. And it made me want to learn more myself. And then I came across Marissa Peer. And I don't know if you know who Marissa Peer is, but she's a famous hypnotist from the UK. And I started to do one of her courses. And it was called Rapid Transformational Therapy. And here's where I got excited. Because I have a very sciencey analytical brain. I have a science background, science degree, all of that. But then there's that energy piece too. And that kind of right brain. And here's where I could put the two together and I could fuse them. And so I started to become a hypnotist, essentially, a clinical practitioner. And it was kind of a combination of cognitive behavioral therapy, NLP, and just little bits of magic intertwined. And I was fascinated and hooked because what I was noticing is some of the techniques and tools that I was using, I could apply in all areas of my life. I could apply them as a teacher. I could apply them as a parent. I could apply them as a wife, maybe a lot as a wife. Absolutely. So I just continued my journey from there. This year, I've also been studying shamanic training as well and going a little deeper into that and just seeing what else I can bring to my practice. And I upgraded to the clinical hypnotism. So I'm now doing it just at a different level. I just wanted to make sure I had all the tools at my fingertips. And that's basically where I am right now is I am integrating the woo and the do. So my analytical brain and my energy and putting them together and making magic happen.
That's such an interesting way to describe that because I'm very right-brained. My left side will come in when she needs to, and we're learning how to be better friends, if you will. And it's so fascinating that there is this piece that is very logical, that is very like, here's what it is. And then there's just things that like we can't really explain, like hypnotism and all that stuff, which we'll get into because it's so juicy. How did that kind of settle with you? First off, when, everything is kind of by the book, there's a way that we do this. And then all of a sudden there's kind of a little bit of like magic. How does that sit with someone who is very left brain focused?
Honestly, for me, it was not easy because I was in all of these rooms and everyone was just like, oh, I'm seeing unicorns and puppies and this. And I'm like, where are they? I can't see this. What is going on? And I wanted this analytical explanation. And people just kept telling me, just trust, just trust. And so it was really hard. Initially developing my intuition, I had to work at it. And I had to find teachers that could teach me in the way that I needed to be taught. And for me, that meant using science because quantum physics can explain a whole lot of magic. And also being able to allow me to ask questions, allow me to make my brain happy. And so I've managed to do that. But it's not easy to do because when you're in that world, there's a lot of people that are just very, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that wasn't me. So I was looking for someone like me to teach me the way to open up my intuition.
For those that are just kind of starting to trust their intuition, right? Because the person that we should trust the most is ourselves. And I think the person sometimes we trust the least is ourselves. So for someone kind of starting out or figuring out that, hey, I need to kind of dial into me more, and this will obviously spill into what we'll talk about later, but what are your tips and tricks for, or even just encouragement of like, you've got this?
I think the biggest thing is to bring in your sense of play. And it's something that I learned working with children, especially young children. You work with a 4 and 5-year-old, they are seeing fairies everywhere. They have no problem going off on a tangent. And if you just kind of channel that inner person and think about, well, if I don't know, but what if I did? And you think of it as imagination and you play. Because if I can envision it, then it can happen.
Yeah, that's good. What was it like being a parent? And I'm not a parent myself, but what was it like seeing a child kind of go through such crippling anxiety? And how did that affect you?
It affected me big time. It affected our entire family. It was really hard, especially when she was in grade 9 and she started refusing to go to school. And you had people all around you saying, well, why can't you just make her? I'm like, good question. And you start to really question yourself and think, what am I doing wrong? Why can everyone else make this happen and I can't? And I think that was one of the biggest pieces is really learning to let go and trust and know that, you know what, everything is working out the way it's meant to. And there's always a lesson and there's always a journey. But in that moment, it's hard. And I think finding communities for me and finding other parents that had experienced some of the same things, that was really what helped me and kept me going. And my husband was amazing too. We were in it together. So at least we could talk about it and be like, okay, we don't know what's going on. We're not sure if we're doing the right thing, but we're just going to keep moving forward one step at a time.
And that's really just the key to life, really one step at a time for anything and everything. So it's so good to hear that in different modalities, if you will, in different areas of life. All right, so you're researching, you're trying to do everything you can to help your daughter, and then you kind of stumble on magic, energy. What are some of the myths? Because as soon as you say those words, I just have like a whole mental image and there's a movie playing in my mind. And again, it kind of depends on culture and upbringing and religion and kind of how it was brought up to you. It either feels safe or scary or sexy or just completely off limits. So in the science world, finding out this energy and magic, kind of what is our hesitancy?
It's true. And I know a lot of people coming from like, I grew up Catholic with a Catholic background, and it was very much, you don't do that. That is not cool. I mean, I have some Irish ancestry, so there's always been a little bit of the fairy and the magic. That's been part of who I am. But at the same time, even when I wanted at school to do just a meditation class for kids, this is back, 15 years ago. They're like, no, you can't do that. That's not okay. And it's interesting how we've evolved since then because things have changed. So it's always people's perception. But knowing that there is a scientific piece, that it is science, kind of really helps people to understand. But the biggest thing I see happen is people start to sometimes, and I know I was guilty of this, give their power away to something outside of themselves. And they start maybe thinking about, okay, well, someone else can tell me this because they can see differently than I can. Maybe they have these magical skills and they can tell me about my future. But the biggest piece to know is you're the one directing your life. You're creating it. So if you're giving your power away, someone else can't. Like, they can tell you what's kind of in front of you quickly, but that changes. It's like a choose your own adventure. Every time you make a decision, it moves, it changes. So if I can tell anyone anything is don't give your power away. Know that everyone has their own intuition. And sometimes it might feel like that tiny little voice inside, but the more you listen to it, the louder it becomes.
That's good. What was the most surprising thing in the discovery of energy later on hypnotherapy? You mentioned a little bit about the intuition, and I think that's such a powerful through line for this whole conversation. But what else did you find that kind of either surprised you or you're like, oh, I actually thought this was how it was all along?
I think the more I got into it, I didn't realize how much I was already relying on my intuition. And to me, it was kind of already this integrated voice in my head. And so I think I was expecting, that on the mountain moment where someone hands you the tablet and it's loud and roaring. And for me, that's not what it looks like. I'm mainly claircognizant. So sometimes I just know. And I think I grew up in a very traumatic environment and I had no voice for a long time. So trauma also teaches you to listen carefully to people and you start to kind of notice language patterns, who's safe, who's not safe. So I thought that was why I knew the things I knew, because I was so good at reading people and understanding language patterns, and just because I'd been doing that for years. So it was realizing that I'm already using my intuition. I just don't know that I am. And I think a lot of people might be doing that too. They're doing a lot of these things and they just don't recognize it as special because it's something they've always known how to do.
Yeah, that's good. So much of this, and even a big part of this show, is self-awareness. And it's so easy for us as humans to live on autopilot because if we have just been doing the things we've always been doing, whether we know the origin or not, kind of doing the reverse engineer part of it is like, oh my word, this is wild. And one of my themes for 2025 has been the word trust. And that kind of goes into intuition as well. But what if someone is listening and they're just like, there is no way I can trust myself with something this big, whether it is, manifesting relationship or job or going down the healing arts path if there's something physical or mental that kind of needs some more looking into. What would you say to that?
Let's say start with changing your language. I always say words are spelling, right? Spelling is important. We learn it in school. But what we don't realize is the words we choose are what we're bringing into our reality. So if that's only the first step for you is listening to what you're saying to yourself and maybe writing that down, becoming aware. What are the messages? Because, we have a lot of thoughts going on. And a lot of times, to your point, we're not necessarily aware of them because they're in our subconscious mind. But just start tuning in. What are you aware of? What are the thoughts that you're repeating over and over? Write them down. And then start thinking about tiny changes you can make. And a big piece of it, as you said, is like being awake. There was this TV show once upon a time about all these dolls that would go around and they would just, wake up and do the thing. And I feel like as humans, we're kind of like that. We're sitting there, we go through our life and we're like, oh, I fell asleep again. I got to wake up. I've got to be intentional. And that is the biggest piece of being human is, we have these monkeys in our brain sometimes and we got to rein them in.
So true. I think that is so practical and so helpful of what are the thoughts that you're already thinking. And I think I was having a conversation with someone recently about it's so easy for us to, what I want to say, like nitpick on ourselves, whether it was a thought or something like the juvenile that we did, like, oh, I'm an idiot, I should have remembered this, or how silly am I for that? And it's so funny that those are the smallest seeds that we can plant, and often it makes the biggest impact. Because if we're able to get away with that kind of, I guess, like lowest tier self-deprecating talk, then when it gets to bigger stuff, I can't perform at my job, or I'm not good enough in this relationship, or I'm not good enough to be a parent, or X, Y, and Z. We just really let a lot of stuff go, thinking that the language is okay. And I'm so glad that you said that, because it really is like, it is all the small things that we really have to start paying attention to. So how did you notice what language you had been talking to yourself about, and how did you kind of see that change?
I started noticing I had this really harsh inner critic. Because again, what happens sometimes when you deal with a lot of trauma, you go within. And for me, that was turning it in on myself. It was turning it in on my body. It was turning it in on that. I just want it to be normal, but I didn't know what normal was. And I think everyone's walking around with this. We want to be normal, but everyone's so unique and amazing exactly as they are.
Yeah.
And the things I would say to myself, I wouldn't say to my best friend, definitely wouldn't say to my daughter, but I was beating myself up. And I think for me, that was the biggest change, is to start thinking, well, of course, if I'm feeding myself a diet of negativity, my whole body is made of water. And you think of Emoto's, I don't know if you're familiar with his scientific experiments with water. So if you take water and you say words of love to it, and then you put it in the freezer, you will come up with these beautiful, symmetrical designs. They look amazing. But if you do the same experiment and you put words of hate, and just even some of the words you might say to yourself, and you put those in, and you put that in the freezer, it looks chaotic. And you can actually physically see. But when you think your whole body is 97% water, so you are doing that to yourself on a regular basis. And I can't say it's always easy to change right away. I mean, I still notice myself doing it because, again, you fall asleep. It's a constant practice of working on it. But I have noticed a significant change. And that really awful voice, I named her Becky. Sorry to all the Beckys out there.
I love it.
But for me, starting to name it was starting to go, okay, you're there. So let's find out what's going on. And sometimes we try to push things out without bringing it into our awareness and allowing it. And I feel like the allowing piece really helps, because if I can allow every part of me, then I can find out what's going on and I can give it permission to express itself. Because sometimes that's all it needs to do.
Yeah.
Is just express itself, and then I can move through it.
Yeah, that's so good. Let's move into hypnotherapy, because it's just the most fascinating thing. What are some of the myths around that too, right? Because I have images of like
Absolutely.
movies and Hollywood and witchy vibes and cauldrons and kind of all of these things, or someone's like holding something out and you're staring at it and like falling asleep. So yeah, what are some of the myths? And then I want to just dive into your journey there.
Well, let me start with the whole stage hypnosis thing.
Please.
If I could do this and make you give me everything you owned, I would have a lot of different cars in my driveway right now. I can't do that. When they're on a stage, they are going through the audience and they are looking for people that are suggestible. But those are the people that would do that anyways. They would do it even if they weren't in hypnosis. You would tell them to cluck like a chicken and they would happily be clucking away. So this is not something that the average person is going to do. I know there's no way I'm getting on a stage and clucking like a chicken. It's just not me. Not going to happen. You can put me in hypnosis all day long. Hypnosis is just a state of relaxation. So you can think of it like right before you go to bed, when you're about to fall asleep. That's when your brain is in that same state. You are very open to suggestion. You're very kind of drowsy, relaxed, and receptive. And that's a moment when you can kind of start to recode your brain, recode your subconscious. Because oftentimes our subconscious is what's driving the car. And we don't want that to happen. We want to have our conscious mind in control, and our conscious mind. And it's still a balance. It's still going to keep switching. But sometimes you can have something in hypnosis that you heard between the age of 0 and 7, because that's when we're walking around like these giant sponges. We don't have a lot out there to be able to say, no, not that. I'm only going to take this. So we're absorbing it all. So someone could have said something to you that was really innocuous. And maybe as an adult, you're like, well, that's just dumb. I'm not accepting that. But that as that little kid, you've taken that, put it in that file cabinet and made it a big deal. And now you're using that as a lens to see the world around you. So in hypnosis, what I'm doing is I'm essentially changing that lens. So it's kind of like being an optometrist, and I'm putting those rose-colored glasses back on because I want you to see things through rose-colored glasses.
Nice. The journey of finding these different things for helping your daughter with the anxiety. Kind of how were you putting these into a practical sense in a day-to-day to kind of help see that change in her over time? What does that kind of look like?
Well, I would try different things out. For example, because she was so quiet, she wasn't able to have a conversation the way we are now.
Mm,
So, what you typically think of as therapy wasn't working. In
yeah.
fact, I couldn't even have her go and do like the sessions that I do, the RTT. She couldn't even do that because she
Mm,
wasn't able to communicate that way. She
mm,
was too shy, too quiet. And I mean, she hates being on camera. So, trying to get through to her with all of those things in the way, the first way that I kind of got in is I started with tapping.
mm,
And I don't know if you're familiar with tapping, but basically you're tapping on the different meridian points and you can actually do it as a surrogate. So she refused to even tap because before the TikTok said all of this stuff was cool.
we have to wait for TikTok for everything.
That's right. Now TikTok is, on board. So of course, as teenagers, they believe things. But before that, they just thought it was crazy mom wanting to do all of these things. So I'm like, just, go with this. Let's try it. So I would tap for her. And what would happen was I could see her body start to calm down. And then as I learned a few more techniques for energy, I was able to kind of make her anxiety calm down and help her calm her body down to the point where she would come to me and say, okay, this is happening again. Can you fix it? She's
Mm,
like, do that thing you do.
mm,
She didn't know what it was, but just do
yeah.
that thing you do and help me make it better.
Mm. What are some of the encouragements for parents with kids who it's like, I want to be able to fix something so bad, and again we're looking to everyone else for the answers because surely there's someone who has walked this road, or at least by now, maybe, hopefully. But what is the encouragement for parents of, yeah, I want to be able to tap for them, I want to be able to communicate to help, not necessarily, take over for forever. What's the encouragement for that? Because I can only imagine the struggle of seeing someone that you love so much really going through a hard time.
The biggest thing is just start.
Mm.
We know, again, through science, just putting our focus on something changes it. They find it really hard to come up with these proper experiments because as soon as they focus on something, it already changes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really difficult to get rid of all the confounding variables. So just by you focusing on it and just by you putting your intention out there that you want whatever you want, but put that in writing. Think about being really clear. What would that look like for that change for your child? Write it down.
Yeah.
Start having that conversation with them. Start thinking about the language they're using and making sure they're thinking about things in the present tense and they're really changing how their language works because I see it as a triangle. So we have thoughts, feelings, and actions.
Mm.
And we can start anywhere on that triangle to have change. And for some of us, starting at the thought period, we can hear it, like we notice our thoughts and we can change them. But for young kids, sometimes you're starting at the feelings.
Mm.
And you're starting by asking, well, what does that feel like in your body? And just giving them the language that they may not have to help them describe things. Because I know that was a big thing for my daughter. She'd go to the doctor and the doctor would say, well, okay, on a scale of, 1 to 10, how are you feeling? And she'd be like, oh, it's a 12. The doctor's like, well, you're not writhing on the ground. So don't
Mm.
think you understand the scale. So it was really teaching her, okay, this hurts. What does that feel like?
Mm.
Can you picture that as a color in your body?
Mm.
Can you expand that? Because sometimes we're afraid of expanding those feelings that are big. But the really beautiful thing is when we do that and we're able to expand it, it changes. Because sometimes those feelings just need to be heard and they need to be experienced and felt. And that's the biggest thing I think parents can do is just allow your children to have their feelings.
Mm.
And I know it's inconvenient because I've been there. And they're stomping and they're throwing a fit and you're thinking, can we just get through the grocery store, please?
Yeah.
And give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you are human and you are not going to be perfect 100% of the time. No one is. So give yourself grace knowing that you are doing the best job you can. And that's all your kid needs.
Yep. That's so good. That's so good. I'll take that for me just today. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Like,
It
that-
works
yeah,
for
doing
any
it.
kind of human.
Perfect. So how does one go about getting certified in hypnotherapy? And talk about that journey of like, hey, I want to get more education. I want to then channel that to give it away to people because it's so fascinating.
Well, as I said, I did the Marissa Peer certification. So it was about a year process. I also did the coaching one as well. So I have both. But for me, it was doing that learning piece, and it's a lot of practice because I feel like if you really want to embody it, you've got to practice because people are very different and they don't always do exactly what they're supposed to in terms of the textbook.
Imagine that.
So when you have that time to practice, that makes all the difference. But also make sure you're going to someone who knows what they're doing. Because especially with hypnosis, it's very easy to implant sort of suggestions. Like I make sure when I am using words that I'm always using things in the positive. I'm not putting any negative suggestions in ever. And I'm not saying it as like a scary, people are going to implant these things in your mind. No, they can't do that. But sometimes it's simple little things and making sure you're wording it in such a way that it's going to work for you and it's going to expand your mind. And you can look, there's all kinds of directories online. There's lots of hypnotism programs everywhere, but just make sure whoever you do something through is accredited because you want to make sure it's being taught by someone who knows how to teach it. So what I start with is I start with an intake form. And I ask people a bunch of questions because I want to know what do they want to work on. And then we have a conversation. And in that conversation, I'm finding out a lot of things. And even as we're having that conversation, I'm starting to talk about things in a certain light because I want you to start imagining what's possible. Because for some of us, we don't even know what's available to us. And maybe it's something we've never thought of before. And sometimes just having a conversation is enough to really plant that little seed. And you start to think of, okay, maybe I can have this. Wow. And that's all it takes. But it's knowing that people are ready. Yeah. And I'm the first to tell someone if they're not ready. Because I'm not going to take them through the whole process if I don't feel that they're ready to make that next step. Because healing, I always say healing is always self-healing. It's not about me giving something to you. It's about us co-creating something and me walking with you and holding space and supporting you. But I'm not doing the work for you. That is always an internal thing. So after we do that intake process, we talk about, your magic wand moment, which is really fun. We start thinking about, what do you want? If you could have anything, what does that look like? And we start to co-create what that looks like. And I'm really good at using words to make that kind of thing come alive. I think that's one of my strengths. And so what we do is we create that piece. And then what I do is before we go into a session, so we've already decided what we want to work on. We've decided how we're going to go in because usually there's a regression piece that happens in hypnosis. So I'm taking you back to a scene, a place, a time that is all to do with whatever we're working on. It could be a feeling. It could be a limiting belief. It could be some kind of trauma piece that's happened in your past. And we're going back to see how your brain arranges stories around it. And I know some people can get caught up, well, what if I can't find a story? Really, it doesn't matter because it's all story anyways. It's all a narrative we've created for ourselves. What I'm looking for is that feeling because when I can find the feeling, I can break it up. And I'm using energy practices as well. So I'm kind of doing both. Yeah. I can break it up energetically and I'm also using words. And then what I normally do is I'll have the outline of a script because I've been doing a lot of just bringing things in with the script. I create the outline. And I get a lot of guidance intuitively. So what I notice is when I go to do the session, my outline of the script that I've come up with is almost always identical to whatever we've pulled up in the session. And again, it seems magical, but it's not me. We're working with a team.
Yeah.
And so what I do after that, so we go through that process, we do a lot of the healing, we bring up the feelings, I include some somatics in there as well. And then after that, I give them a recording. And in that recording, we take that idea of what life is going to be like, that dream that they've had, that thing that they weren't sure was possible, but maybe now it is. And we encode that. And they start to listen to that recording every day for at least 21 days. The actual science says 21 to 66 days is when we can start to have change. And they're listening to that either right before they go to bed or first thing in the morning when your brain is in that receptive state. And what happens is things start to change. And usually there's 3 types of people. So there's that person that the change happens like this. It's rapid. They were ready. It just is almost instantaneous. Then there's the next person where they think, well, I'm not sure this is working. And then they look back 6 months later and like, everything changed. I just didn't notice because it was incremental, right? And then sometimes there's that person that does take a little bit longer. And sometimes it does take a few more sessions. It really depends on how much trauma there is and how much we have to bring up layers. But there's always change, because whenever you focus on something, you're changing it.
Mm,
So as long as people are ready and open and willing, change happens.
so good. That is so good. What is the science behind energy that we miss?
Well, that's all the fun stuff. That's the quantum stuff. There is so much research happening right now that's just proving all the things we know. Like just the fact, even time. They've been doing some research studies lately that time's actually speeding up,
Mm.
which is very interesting. But it's also, keep in mind, time is something it's relative, right? If you're you're sitting in the doctor's office and maybe you're going in and you're not sure, it could feel like forever.
Oh, yeah.
And other times you're doing something you really love, you're in flow, everything is great, and it just goes by like that. Or you're on vacation. You're like, okay, a week went by? How? So it's relative to us. So that's why the scientists say time doesn't really exist, because we can't really quantify it. We try our best. As humans, we put all of these things in place.
Yeah.
But when you look at quantum physics, there's a lot of experiments. As I mentioned before, that one experiment where they kept looking at light boxes, and every time they focused on something, it changed. So it was really difficult for them to complete the experiment.
Yeah.
Because every time you have someone who has a bias about something, scientifically, they're influencing that experiment. But when you think we can use these things to our advantage, like right now, our mirror neurons are talking to each other at an energetic level. So that's why they always say, surround yourself with people that want to change their lives, that want to make a difference, that are positive, because your neurology is talking to them. So if you're around those people, even if you feel like you're having a really bad day, they can uplift you because their frequency is higher, because it's all about frequency. And I think of it like a radio station. And what you're doing is you're just turning to a different station. You know how you get those in-between stations and it makes that horrible noise?
Yep.
You just keep turning the dial. So if you're not at the station you want to be, turn the dial. Start tuning into a different station.
I love that. When we kind of think of this in the headspace of woo-woo, where we're thinking things are instantaneous, you light a candle, spray some sage, boom, magic happened. Right. And we're talking about time being relative and really not a thing as much as we would like to think it is. What do you say when there has to be work that needs to be put in and it's not instantaneous? It might be a month. It might be 6 months. It might be a year. It might be the rest of our lives, For the quick and instantaneous part of our brain that just wants it immediately, what is the benefit of having it not be as fast as we want it to be?
Well, I think the biggest benefit is, think about your thoughts. If things came in as quickly as you wanted them to, imagine what you would be creating on a regular basis. It would be a little bit scary, wouldn't it? You'd probably be like, oh, well, there's that saber-toothed tiger that just came in. Oops. I had a quick thought, right? But know that the positive thoughts have more impact than the negative in general, even though humans have a negativity bias. But think about how much we stop things from happening as well. So if we put in an order to Amazon, we know it's coming. Sometimes it comes practically before we've ordered it. It arrives by parachute or something. I don't know. But we know it's happening. In our bodies, we have that, yeah, I know, it's coming. Amazon's getting it to you. But when we go and order things from the universe, we don't have that same knowing. We might put in our order and then we're like, oh, but I don't know. What if it's not going to come? What if this is going to happen? And every time we do that, we slow down the process. So it's about us being in alignment. If we want things to happen faster, then what can we do to make sure we're in alignment? And sometimes there's just a patience piece, because what we have come up with our measly human brains is so different than what the universe is trying to put into play. But sometimes the universe needs a little bit of time to put all of the pieces together and create something that's even better than you could have ever come up with on your own. So allowing that process and allowing that time, and I know I'm the worst for that sometimes. We don't have a lot of patience as humans. We want it and we want it now, especially because of social media and everything else, and we're used to things being instant. But when you think about it, even those pop stars that are overnight successes, we don't look at the 5 to 10 years of toil that happens before that instant success.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That's such a great message, because I struggle with that so much. It's not that I necessarily want things to be instantaneous. I want to learn the thing that I want to be learning before I go through the thing I'm supposed to go through. I'm like, oh, great. How can I be efficient in this? How can I kind of do the best thing for my feelings? And yes, sit with them, but also like, how do I just make the end result a little bit easier, right? And sometimes universe like just gives us no choice except to go through the thing. And that's kind of where, again, trusting, it kind of all is down to trust and positivity and words. Everything at all just kind of distills down to something very, very simple, which sometimes the simplicity of things, we want it to kind of be quantum physics-esque. Like, I want the equations, I want the experiments, I want the data, I want to see charts and Excel spreadsheets and all these things. And sometimes just the simplest thing is like, just go about your day, just knowing that things are working out. And sometimes that is just so hard to do. Am I right? Am I just like on the struggle bus
No.
myself? I feel like it's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing you can do is start documenting the little pieces. Get a journal. Like, I have one right here, my little one. Get a journal, start writing it down. You find 5 cents in the street, have a party, write it down. Because what you'll notice is when you look back on things, you'll see all of the miracles that are happening that maybe you've missed, because we have something called the reticular activating system. And what it does is there's so many bits of information that are coming in all at once. But our brain, as the giant computer it is, can't possibly pay attention to all of that. So that system helps us to focus on certain things. And that focus is our choice. Remember we mentioned those rose-colored glasses? That's where you get to choose what you see in the world. So you can choose to have the negative piece and, oh my gosh, someone almost hit me on the street. Or you can think, you know what? I didn't hit the pedestrian that was here, or I didn't get into that accident because I was a few minutes late this morning. It's how you perceive. And the more you focus on the positive, I know it sounds very cliche, but it's true. It starts to appear in your world. And I think of that song from Miley Cyrus. I can't remember the name of it, but there's always going to be another mountain.
Yeah.
And we're all going to want to climb it.
Yep.
Right? So if we can start to focus on the journey and not think of getting to the top, because as soon as we get to the top, what happens? We're like, okay, well, that was fun. And we climb again. So it's when we can be present. And I say this knowing that this is the most difficult, challenging thing. This is not easy, but we didn't come here for easy. I always say this is the ninja course. Earth is the ninja course, pretty much. And we all chose to be here. So we're here doing the ninja thing. And what we can do is we can focus on the positive. We can work together and we can use the tools that we have to make our experience a little bit better.
That's so good. And that's a sad thing too, right? Everyone is always like, get to that mountaintop, but there have been zero conversations about what happens next. Right? Because you could get to the set of like your first mountaintop and then you're finding out, oh crap, that's a series of a lot of other mountains. Or it could just basically fall off and you've reached the edge of the earth. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no, it's all about getting somewhere. But then it's like, what happens next? There really is no dialogue about anything. It's always just strive for this and then what happens. So I think that also too, in tying in with everything, that really limits us because the intuition is like, oh, there's always more, right? Or at least that's kind of my inner dialogue of like, there's always more than what is right here. Is it extravagant? Not necessarily. Sometimes there's more in the simplicity of things, but just knowing that we don't get to be stuck. Like we don't have to be. That also is a choice, right? But just knowing that there is more out there, learning how to trust ourselves, speaking positively, documenting everything down in whatever way you need to. I think it's really beautiful. And it's such a wonderful reminder too of like, we do have more power than we think. And
Absolutely.
It's encouraging to hear, like scientifically, like Denise is not just like making all this up.
I am not making it up. I swear to you. I wish I could.
Nor would you. Like you are a very honest person. And it's like, I've just known you for this hour, but it's like, no, she does not make stuff up. She researched, there's books, she's gone in and she's done the work and it shows. And it's a beautiful thing to witness.
Well, they can say if you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand.
Ooh,
right?
That's good.
There's a lot of, I didn't come up with that.
It
That was Bob Proctor.
It sounded so good as if you did. I would have been totally here for it. You would have just said, that was me.
Yep, no, Bob Proctor. If you can hold it in your head, you can hold it in your hand. And then there's also Esther Hicks, who came up with it's just as easy to manifest a button as it is to manifest a castle. But again, the limitations are what we place on ourselves.
That's it. Let this new year, 2026, be the year that we can also start manifesting castles when we've always just thought our capacity was buttons.
Absolutely.
I love that so much. Oh, that's so good. Let's build them, Denise.
I love it. I've always been fascinated by castles, so I'm in.
Okay. What part of the world do you want a castle in?
I would love Spain. You know what? I love just pieces of Europe, even Ireland. Like there's some really cool castles. Scotland, I always thought there was a castle tour that I want to go on. Scotland has a lot of really cool castles. So yeah, somewhere let's just explore. But then it's interesting because you think of, okay, I want a castle, but think of the reality of a castle. Castles didn't have windows. They're pretty drafty, pretty dirty because they just threw, because I know elementary school teacher, I taught all about medieval times. They just threw all the garbage on the ground. So sometimes we have this vision of what we think is this thing we want. And really, it's not what we want. So that's why sometimes it's important to think of the feeling. What's the feeling that we want to have? We want to feel safe. We want to feel connected. We want to feel heard. And if we can focus on those things, then sometimes the universe can match that and bring us something we didn't know we wanted.
I'm speechless. That is so good. You're right, because think about it. In medieval times, everyone's dying before the age of 40.
Yeah. They have really bad teeth.
Yeah. Living in tyranny of just all of this war and famine, disease, pestilence. There's no, or I said irrigation in my mind. That's not right. Plumbing.
Yeah.
They're just throwing shit out the window, quite literally. Do you know what I mean?
And you're hoping you stay away from that castle because you do not want that raining on you.
Exactly right. And there's a fascination about like a castle on a hill, but like that is also isolating too. You just have this posture of like looking down on stuff when really.
And we think of that princess. We all want to be the princess dressing up, but think about the princess has no rights.
Yep.
She's female. So at that point in time, she was beholden to whoever her father or husband or whomever. So it's, So when you start to think of it through that lens, it's what do I really want?
I will literally be thinking about this for the rest of the day. And that is so good. What do we actually want, not what the image is?
And I think that's the biggest thing. Sometimes we don't know.
Yeah.
We really don't. I know my husband always says, I'm like, what do you want? Like, tell me what you want, what you really, really want. It's like, I don't know. Like, well, you go figure that out. Come back when you have an answer.
I think that kind of goes back to just the basics of communication. Like we haven't learned, through no one's fault if no one else learned, right? Of how do we communicate things? How do we process feelings as children with a lot of trauma wrapped around what has been said, what hasn't been said, what's been done, what hasn't been done? And then you kind of grow up, and as an adult, you know, we've processed. Our prefrontal cortex is very much engaged by the time we're in our mid-late 30s. And it's like, okay, the rest of our lives we're making a little bit better of decisions, or at least with good standing than we did when we were younger. But we're still in that castle mindset of we just want something pretty without knowing, oh, there's actually a lot of ugly stuff, you know? So really kind of going through the trenches and really figuring out what is it about the castle. Love it. That's all I'm thinking about for the rest of the day. Denise, that is so good. As we wrap up here, you've gone into a lot of different things in your life, which is just so encouraging. You know, you can start as one thing and just change our minds and go chase the thing that we're passionate about. And the ultimate goal is helping people in whatever facet that is. So what is your next chapter? How do you see the story unfolding?
For me, I'm doing a lot more teaching, I think. And I think this year there's been a lot of growth and just building my own confidence and thinking, okay, can I do the thing? Well, who am I not to, right? If we think of it as service and serving others and being there to help support, rather than thinking about ourselves and our limitations and being a perfectionist, because I know that's the hard thing. So for me, it's just going out there and doing the thing. What can I do every day to help light someone else's day up?
That's perfect. Excellent. Denise, thank you so much for your time and being here today. This has been a fantastic conversation, and I will think about castles differently for the rest of my life. Thank you very much.
You can still be a princess though, Michaela. It's okay.
You've been in a castle that's a little bit better than the 1500s.
There you go.
We've grown a lot, so we have indoor plumbing. So that takes care of one issue.
An important one.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of you who took the time to come and listen to us talk.
We love you.
Thanks for listening. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen, give it a rating, and review while you're at it. It really goes a long way. And check out the show notes for all the ways to stay connected with me and our guests. Until the next episode.